Hello everybody and welcome back to D6 Wounds. So 2025 is the year of Hashut, and I spent a long time, night after night, slaving away painting this new army, and it's about time I did a little showcase and show off some of the models. And of course it's the big hat Chaos Dwarfs, and these Chaos Dwarfs, it's just such a classic range for me. It's always been a passion project that I've wanted to do, and it's such a blessing to finally be able to paint and field these classic models that I've loved for so long. The details are just fantastic. I mean, it's all about those big hats with the very striking, arrow and skull patterns on every model. Just makes a really kind of cohesive look to the whole army, where they've all got the same hats on. Not easy to paint, mind. Every model is essentially twice as large as a regular dwarf, and has a lot of detail on every hat. But it really is a joy to paint. I looked at the third ed range briefly because there are some models I like in that range. Not such a fan of the later Forge World Chaos Dwarfs. I like to see the faces of the Chaos Dwarf. I like their sort of twisted expressions on their faces, with the exception perhaps of the Iron Demon model, which is a classic, and I couldn't make a Chaos Dwarf army without having a steam train in the army. And this is what I've come up with. It's still not quite finished. There's still a couple of units to go because I want to get it up to 2,500 points, because I see quite a few events now in the UK going up to 2,500, 2,600 for Warhammer The Old World. So I hope to take part in some of those with Chaos Dwarfs soon. Yet to play a game with this army as well. I like to paint an army first and then play with it. So I've got that all to look forward to. So the army is led by my general, the only character in the army so far, the Chaos Dwarf Lord, or perhaps better known recently as an Infernal Castellan, or probably, and most likely to be, if we're not playing with Renegade army lists, a Sorcerer Prophet on Bale Taurus. I've got some cheeky freehand on the banner there, which I've lifted out of one of the 4th ed books. Not traced, just sort of drawn it on myself, and it's a little bit cartoony, but I think it's great. It kind of matches the iconography on his big hat, which is extra big for the Chaos Dwarf Lord. It's been a first for me for the flaming body effect. The first time I'm trying this kind of reverse highlighting or dark lighting, or whatever you want to call it, where you sort of start from very bright colours and then shade upwards to the black. I wanted the model to appear bright, so I've left quite a lot of the yellow showing. It's on a 60 by 100mm base. A little bit large for the old model, but that's fine. I think you can, obviously it's got big wings, so it's fine on the big base, and really going to enjoy playing this model on the tabletop. Next up is the Chaos Dwarf infantry, and this was the most slow and painstaking part to paint because I painted them all simultaneously, as I tend to do when I've got lots of mass infantry, and I spent time sort of highlighting every little scale on their armour. But I'll come to the painting a bit later on in this video. The original blunderbuss models have actually got the end of the blunderbuss is just flat, bare metal, and so it was commonly from the 4th ed book and White Dwarfs there to kind of paint a sort of pattern on the end of the blunderbuss to give it that concave look. I remember seeing some people online actually drilling into the end of the model and sort of taking out a lot of metal to actually make it more like the barrel of a gun, but I think it looks fine by just sort of painting a little pattern on the end. Pleased with how the standard bearer turned out. Another free-handed banner there with the anvil. Really pleased with that, how that turned out. I remember that these old Perry models, there were 4 original ones made with them in the shooting position, and then they added another 3 later, sort of the back rank models where the guns are more pointed upright. Also got the Axeman, of course, with the axe and shield. Spent time freehanding all of the shields there with that sort of skull and lightning icon. Again, straight from the 4th ed book. I like how these models are slightly different in size and weight as well. It makes it look more realistic how there's sort of different sizes of a dwarf there. And then one of the old axemen in a different pose, which I think was originally from, I don't know, Warhammer Quest or something, but they're quite hard to get a hold of on eBay. Quite lucky to get a couple of those. Now the Iron Demons, yes, the Skull Cracker, just a classic model. This, I mean, it's just absolutely maniacal, isn't it? With this massive clunking machine with all of these. I mean, it's just you couldn't make it up, could you? It's just the machine that the devil would use. Diabolical madness. This is not a Forge World model. It's a 3D print. I found very expensive and hard to get hold of the original Forge World models, and the ones that you find tend to be already built and painted. There's very few sort of unpainted ones knocking about for an affordable price. And I thought I wanted to do quite a sort of unique paint job. Not unique in the sense that it stands out, but just sort of blending in with the blacks and reds of my army, rather than the ones I tend to see online. They've got a very dark metallic look to the whole thing, and the whole thing is metal and chrome, and I wanted them to be black and red and actually fit in with the Chaos Dwarf warriors as well. I put them on big 100 by 150mm bases. I looked at them on the 60 by 100 because that's how they're supposed to be according to the Chaos Dwarf list for Old World, but they just look silly on those little bases. I couldn't do it. I had to put them on the big base. So I'll have to give my opponent the benefit of the doubt if my opponents prefer that we play by OG base sizes, but I don't think it'll make a big difference. And obviously I've got some of the old Chaos Dwarf warriors from Blood Bowl, actually, as crew for the Iron Demons. Lovely models there, and I wanted to include them in the army somehow, so I've whacked them onto the Iron Demons. The artillery, the Death Shriekers, and of course the big Earthshaker, which I'm going to go into more detail later. One of my all-time favourites, that Earthshaker. Had a lot of fun with the crew. Again, every model in this range is just glorious and has like a different pattern on its hat, and it's just so much fun to paint every model. I'm having a lot of fun just thinking about the pattern on the hats, and you know, if you've got a separate War Machine crew, kind of gives you an excuse to give it a separate pattern. Another free-handed banner, of course, on the Earthshaker, again lifted from the 4th Ed book, and cheeky ogre loader to add a few more wounds and attacks to the Earthshaker. Just an excuse to get a something green skin into the army. We'll be painting some Black Orcs at some point, or maybe some Hobgoblins, but currently it's just that humble ogre is the only non-Chaos Dwarf in the army. Went full Goblin green on the bases. I think that ties in nicely with the old school colour scheme, and also ties in with my Orc and Goblin army. So if I did want to ally the two armies together, or if and when I get some Black Orcs painted, I could run them with the Chaos Dwarfs or with the Orcs and Goblins, so I've got the option there. And yeah, that's it. That's what I've got painted so far. So I hope you like it, guys. Stick around if you want to hear my ramblings about how I painted the Chaos Dwarfs. So here it is, Chaos Dwarf Earthshaker, Mighty Cannon of Destruction. Such a classic model. I'm so blessed to be able to have an original Chaos Dwarf Earthshaker in the packaging, in quite good condition. Lovely old box there, all weathered and destroyed. You can see how it's the sort of sun damage where it's been sitting on the shelf for so long. Can you find the year on here? Let's look at the back. The Earthshaker Cannon is an awesome creation of the Chaos Dwarf sorcerers. It is monstrously heavy and extremely destructive. Its screaming shells roar through the air and tear into the earth, causing the ground to crack and shake apart. I love how they've got the old the banner there. Just, I mean, a war machine with a banner is pretty cool in itself. Let's try and find the date here. What have we got? 1993. Camera down for a second. So as I had the Earthshaker cannon brand new in the box, I decided to try a painting video. Now, I'm by no means a professional painter. This is just very much a hobby for me in my spare time. But I do like painting videos. I like listening to them while I'm painting. And so I thought I'd give it a go. And perhaps some of my subscribers might enjoy it. Now, unfortunately, I think this is going to be the first and last painting video I do. There's something about having the camera in my room on record while I'm painting that I found a little bit intrusive. I think painting for me is very much relaxation after the day's finished. It's sort of late in the evening after my kids are in bed, and I've got that little bit of downtime to myself. And I kind of just want to keep it as my own time there, rather than having to think about, setting up a tripod with a camera and stuff like that. But maybe I'll do something in the future with photographs where I can talk through it stage by stage. But I think that's the last time I'm actually going to record or attempt to record a painting video. Anyway, let me know what you think, guys, if you want to see anything else like that in the future. So one of the really cool things about the EARTHSHAKER cannon is this, the three crew are quite unique. You've got the master gunner on his own, pointing the finger there, and then you've got the other two who are holding one of the EARTHSHAKER shells on a sort of stretcher, indicating that there's this massive, really heavy mortar shell that they're trying to reload. And the EARTHSHAKER cannons always had special rules. I think from 4th ed it was something like if one crew member dies, then it only fires every other turn because they need all 3 crew to reload it. And now for Warhammer The Old World, you've got a roll of 3 up on the dice in order to reload it successfully for the next turn. Or if you've got an ogre helper, then it's reduced to a 2 up, which is still can be quite annoying during the game. But I think it's quite a cool rule there. It just represents how big and heavy these shells are. And each of these sculpts is just wonderful. The hats themselves have a really cool lightning pattern on them, with the skulls as well, so it kind of fits in with the rest of the Chaos Dwarf hats, but they're quite unique, and I'm going to look forward to perhaps doing a different kind of purple design on the hats rather than the black, and then maybe doing some bright yellow lightning bolts on them, in stark contrast to the dark purple. Flicking through the 4th ed book and sort of thinking ahead to the colour scheme I was going to paint my Chaos Dwarfs, I really like the black and red, particularly on the hats. Lots of the hats are done in slightly different styles in the paint scheme in the book, and some of them have a black or a blue background with the red stripes, others have a red background with a black or blue stripes, and I think I'm going to keep them all fairly consistent with a black background and the red stripes over the top, but then I may add some extra highlights to the red, a bit of flaming orange and yellows to make them really pop on top of that black, and then maybe add some purples in to the black in order to give some variety to the base colour as well. For the main red base then, I've gone for Evil Sun Scarlet with a crimson wash, and then more Evil Sun Scarlet over the top of that to brighten it up, followed by highlights of Wild Rider Red and Troll Slayer Orange. And initially when I'm putting down that Evil Sun Scarlet, I'm not being too careful to sort of stay within the lines, because that's going to be a lot of red on all the models, and it's just taking my time to make sure that they've all got a nice even coat of the Evil Sun Scarlet, using quite a big brush to begin with, just slapping all of that red on all of the armour and the arrows on the hats, and of course on the EARTHSHAKER itself. I went for a big 60 by 100mm base. Actually in Warhammer The Old World it doesn't say you need any specific base size for this model, and the other war machines are on the 50 by 75mm bases. I did want to do a bigger base though than the Death Shriekers are on, just because I think that the EARTHSHAKER deserves a bit more grandeur, and I didn't really want to do a round base or anything, so I've gone for a base that's probably too big for the EARTHSHAKER, but I'm planning on adding some extra rocks and stuff on there to give a bit more variety to the areas of the base that are a little bit bare at the moment. After getting the base reds down, it seemed like a good time to do the basing. I used my normal methodology that I'd use with all my armies, is I put loads of PVA glue on the base, I've then got a combination of sand and bird feed to create a sort of stony, grassy effect, give lots of texture to the base. It then requires, after I've let it dry, another coat of watered down PVA over the top to really just seal it onto the base and make sure that it's not coming off as you handle your models in the future, and it really sticks on there. After I finish painting the model, I will finish the base with Goblin Green, shading it down with a green wash, and then highlighting it up again with some Avalan Sunset, after I've put some extra rocks on the base and dry brush those to give a bit of contrast to the green. I then proceeded to do the base colours all over the model. Now, sometimes I'll paint this way, where I'll do all the base colours before I do all of the highlights. Sometimes I'll pick one colour and do all the highlights on that colour, and then go back and do a second colour. Basically, it just depends on how confident I am of the colour scheme that I'm using. If I know exactly what colours I'm going to use, then typically I can just go and highlight one colour and before I go on to the next one. At this time I was painting this Earthshaker, I still wasn't 100% decided on the colour scheme, and so I've actually based everything initially before I've started highlighting, so I can kind of see how things are progressing as we go along. The flesh tones are my normal formula for dwarf flesh, so I've started with Cadian flesh tone. Sometimes I go underneath with the Bugman's Glow if I want to darken it down and really shade it up in stages, but for most of the dwarves I've gone straight in with the Cadian flesh tone, shaded down with the Reekland flesh shade, and then highlighted up with more Cadian flesh tone and then Kislev flesh as the final highlight. And one of the changes that I decided to make was the blues. So I put down a base of Cantor blue, kind of following the colour schemes in the book. And then I just decided that the kind of regal look of the blue, I kind of wanted to save that really for my dwarf army. And I thought, these evil Chaos Dwarfs don't really need any blues on them. I can just do it in purples and pinks to give it a bit more of a sort of darker look to it. And I don't know why, I just fancied the purples and pinks rather than the blues. And so I actually ended up painting the whole army without any blues, and just wherever I was following the colour scheme in the book, I would just swap the blues out for purples. And I'm actually really pleased with that decision. So for the base of the hats, I've gone in on all the purples with a Nagaroth Knight base, a Nuln Oil wash, and then Zareus purple, and then Genestealer purple. And then for a final highlight, I've mixed the Genestealer purple with a bit of white to make it extra bright, and done some dots on there. And I think it's given a nice blended effect of the purples on the base there, and that should be offset by the bright reds and then the lightning bolts. Now I'm in two minds at this stage whether to do the lightning bolts in yellow, like I'm doing with the Deathstreaker rocket crew, or maybe just do them in metallics, and in the end I go for the metallic bronze. The skulls I've based with a combination of Wraithbone and Screaming Skull. I then darken it down with a bit of Seraphim Sepia, and then sometimes a second wash of Nuln Oil as well, depending on how kind of deep the recesses are of the skull, whether it needs to be darkened down a bit, and then I go back in with more Wraithbone and then a final highlight of pure white on just some of the raised areas. For the brass trim, I've gone for Runelord brass, and I probably won't highlight that because it's quite bright already. It's quite thin, you need a couple of coats of it sometimes, and I might go back and do another coat sort of towards the end of painting the model. But I just like that Runelord brass, and you can paint it over the black and it looks lovely. I might highlight it with a touch of silver, but I want mainly that Runelord brass colour showing. So one of the coolest things about this model is that it's got a big banner pole, and not many war machines do, right? So to do it justice, I've got to really freestyle a nice big banner for it. And I came across this one from the 4th ed book, which was actually originally on the back of the Great Taurus model, and it's kind of a volcano erupting with lots of skulls around it. And I think because it's a big cannon, I think that kind of goes well with the volcano erupting theme. So I haven't actually, traced it or photocopied it. I've just sort of tried to draw it again, so I don't have as much sort of crisp detail as in the original banner, and it might look a bit cartoony, but I think it's come off quite well in the end, and you can sort of see the skulls and bones and the big explosion, and I think people will get the connection there, at least, with the Earthshaker cannon. So the main body of the Earthshaker cannon is wood, and I remember painstakingly highlighting every bit of the wheels and the framework to try and keep the grain of the wood showing, which obviously has been brought out by the crimson wash, by brightening up the red, but trying not to go over that grain. I didn't want to use that final highlight of Trollslayer orange that I've been using on my actual Chaos Dwarf warriors on the woodwork, because I think that would get too bright. So I went in with some, after I'd got the Wild Rider red down, I went in with some of this blazing orange, which is from one of the old Hexpot paints, which is a very bright reddy orange, but doesn't go sort of full orange like the Trollslayer orange. And I think that came off quite well in the end. The black parts of the wood I've just left plain black, and then gone in with a final highlight of silver. Chainmail, which is another Hexpot paint as well. The final details on the cannon itself are the metals, where I've got a base of lead belcher, a black wash followed by chainmail, and the yellows, which is a base of avalanche sunset with a highlight of dawn yellow. So one of the final things to do then was the beards. Now when you're highlighting black, you've got to be very careful, because you can overdo it and make a black beard look more like a grey beard. And often when you leave it just pure black, the way the light catches the model when you're looking at it kind of looks like a highlight on its own, and you don't want to go above that, right? So anyway, I've used Skaven Blight Dinge and Storm Vermin Fur as the final highlight there on the black. Sometimes I had to go back in with a Baden Black to kind of take it down a notch because the highlight was a bit too strong. Anyway, I'm pleased with the way it turned out. I think I could do a bit better, but you've really got to take your time with it, making sure that you're just hitting literally one kind of hair on or one raised area on the beard at a time. Otherwise, you're going to have to go back over it with another black wash again, or just paint over it in black and start again. So it was very slow and painstaking, but we did highlight them, and they still at least look like black beards.